In a dojo where strength is mistaken for superiority, one woman walks in quietly. Out. But when a black belt tries to humiliate her with a chokehold for fun, what happens next? Flips the entire class on its head. A soft chime echoed as the dojo door slid open. She stepped in quietly, her gym bag slung over one shoulder, her expression calm and unreadable. The late afternoon sun caught the edge of her cornrows as she gave a respectful nod toward the instructor already waiting on the mat. Around her, the students, some stretching, some chatting, turned to look. Their glances were quick, some curious, others dismissive. Now, a few of the senior students, all in crisp white GIs with black belts, cinched confidently at their waists, shared a smirk. The newcomer didn't wear a GI, just plain black leggings and a dark tank top. Her walk was quiet, posture straight, every step grounded with quiet discipline. She bowed properly before stepping onto the mat. The instructor, a stern-faced man, with a shaved head, motioned toward her. He gave a short introduction, saying she was here for a trial class. There was no applause, just a few stiff nods. And then, from the back, a snort. One of the higher-ranked black belts nudged his friend and leaned in. Bet she doesn't last 5 minutes, he whispered, loud enough for the group near him to hear. They chuckled, not maliciously, but with the confidence of people who thought they'd seen everything. The warm-ups began. The students moved into standard routines, high knees, shadow strikes, light stretching. The woman joined in without hesitation, her movements precise and smooth. Her breathing was steady, deliberate. She didn't look around or try to follow anyone. She already knew the rhythm. The instructor's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. Meanwhile, the same black belt from earlier made a show of things. Every strike he threw came with an exaggerated kia, loud enough to echo off the wooden walls. He stretched, with theatrical grunts bouncing on his heels and cracking his neck like he was about to enter a championship fight. A few younger students laughed, feeding off his energy. He glanced at the woman and gave a wink she ignored completely. As warm-ups ended, the students were split into pairs for technique drills. The instructor moved with authority, assigning partners quickly. When he pointed toward the black belt and gestured toward the woman, a few people raised eyebrows. The black belt tilted his head slightly, then shrugged. Sure, he said, rolling his shoulders as he walked over. He extended a hand casually. You ready? He asked with a grin that barely masked his condescension. She shook his hand wordlessly and moved into position. The drill was basic and side block. Counter-strike, rotate. He began slowly, walking her through the movements like she'd never seen them before. Okay, you want to step here like this? No, more like this, he said, adjusting her stance, even when she was already correct. She let him. She said nothing. Then came the first full-speed drill. He moved in with light resistance, his strikes telegraphed in a touch too slow, like he didn't want to hurt her, or perhaps didn't think she could keep up. She responded with textbook technique, clean counters, and smooth pivots. Still, he kept talking. Good, see? You're getting it? Just watch your back foot. On the sidelines, a few of the other students were watching now, murmuring. One nudged another. She's got balance. Did you see that slip? The other shrugged. Probably danced before or something. The black belt increased the intensity slightly. His strikes came faster now, his stance lower. She didn't flinch. She matched his pace without breaking. Her breathing, the sound of their feet brushing the mat, the soft slap of blocked strikes was starting to draw attention. But he didn't notice. He was still assuming he was in control. He circled her once, throwing a sudden, unexpected sweep. She hopped over it effortlessly, countering with a controlled palm strike that stopped an inch from his chest. She lowered it and stepped back before he could react. A few heads turned. He blinked. Nice. Reflexes, he said, slower this time, less amused, less sure. But she just gave a small bow and waited for the next drill. By now, the instructor was watching. Closely, arms crossed, its expression unreadable. There was something off about her movements. Not in a bad way, but in the way they were too polished, too refined, to belong to a casual trial student. Her transitions were effortless. Her guard never dropped. She never overcommitted. In most. Importantly, she wasn't trying to prove anything. The black belt, on the other hand, started tightening up. His moves were sharper, but not cleaner. He tried to feint. She didn't bite. He tried rushing the drill. She didn't flinch. Each time she reset with the same calm eyes, the same solid stance. It wasn't aggression. It was quiet control. The class was only halfway done, and already the mood in the room had shifted. The smirks had faded. The whispers had stopped. No one was laughing anymore, and the black belt, still trying to convince himself he was in charge, was about to make a very serious mistake. The mats were reset, and the instructor stepped forward with a firm voice that carried across the room. Light sparring, controlled strikes. Respect your partner. His eyes scanned the students before resting briefly on the black belt and then on the woman. She nodded silently. The black belt rolled his shoulders, flashing his trademark grin. "Hope you can breathe," he said with a chuckle, loud enough for the room to hear. A few students laughed nervously. The woman didn't respond. Her face remained calm, her stance steady as she stepped forward to face him. They bowed. The match began. The energy shifted. He moved fast, faster than before. His strikes were sharp, precise, but not excessive, at least not at first. She parried smoothly, not countering aggressively, simply responding. Her movements were efficient. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to dominate. She was just present, and that quiet presence made him uncomfortable. He feinted left, came in with a roundhouse. She blocked it with a raised forearm. He grinned again, circling her. "Not bad," he muttered, breath sharp through his nose. He threw a quick jab combo. She evaded with small, efficient steps, her gaze locked on his chest, never flinching, never looking away. It wasn't flashy, but it was surgical. Something about that precision, about her refusal to take the bait, started to irritate him. Without warning, his demeanor shifted. Stance widened. His hands dropped lower, not the traditional guard anymore. He was improvising now, testing her. She adjusted accordingly, but gave no sign of alarm. Then, with a sudden burst of movement, he faked a low sweep and shot behind her. Before anyone could react, his arm looped around her neck from behind. Too tight. A rear choke, not part of any sanctioned sparring. His forearm pressed against her throat as he pulled her backward, off balance. The room froze. The other pair stopped mid-spar. All eyes locked on them. It wasn't training anymore. It wasn't sparring. It was a display. Some gasped. The instructor took a step forward, but hesitated. The woman hadn't tapped. She wasn't flailing. She wasn't panicked. In fact, her feet were still under her, even as he tried to drag her back into a full lock. Her eyes narrowed, but her breathing remained measured, shallow but controlled. Her fingers reached not to claw at his arm, but to subtly reposition. Her own balance, she shifted her hips. Her knees bent slightly, absorbing his weight. And in one swift, explosive second, everything flipped. Her foot pivoted, her hips turned. And with a brutal, clean movement, she used his momentum against him, flipping him over her shoulder and slamming him flat onto the mat. A sharp, echoing slap of impact rang out, bouncing off the dojo walls. The black belt hit hard. The air punched from his lungs, eyes wide with shock. The students flinched. No one spoke. Before he could process what happened, before his limbs could catch up to his confusion, she was already on him, light, precise, fluid. Her leg swung over, hooking his arm. Her body shifted like water, no wasted motion. And in one seamless transition, she locked him into a triangle choke tight, efficient, perfect. His face turned red instantly. His arms scrambled, trying to find leverage. One hand tapped frantically against her side. Tap, tap, tap. She released him immediately. Rolling away and coming to her feet in one graceful motion, he gasped, coughing, eyes darting, trying to process what had just happened. She stood calm and composed, adjusting her shirt like nothing had occurred. The dojo was silent.
Yes.
Every student was frozen.
Eyes.
The instructor's expression was unreadable. his arms crossed now, one eyebrow slightly raised. The only sound in the room was the black belt's ragged breathing as he sat up slowly, staring at the mat like it had betrayed him. No one dared to laugh. No one said a word. She bowed again, then stepped back into position, waiting for further instruction. The message was crystal clear. She hadn't come to play. And she hadn't come to prove anything either. She was simply answering disrespect with truth. The black belt's limbs flailed in panic, his hands clawing at nothing, his legs kicking as the pressure around his neck tightened. The triangle choke was locked in perfectly, too perfect for someone who was supposedly new. His pride had made him reckless, and now his body was betraying him. With a final gasp, he tapped rapidly, repeatedly. His hand beat against her side like a drum begging for mercy. She let go instantly, not a second longer than necessary. No smugness, no theatrics, just a clean release. She rolled away and stood, up with ease, brushing a loose thread from her leggings, as if the entire thing had been part of a routine stretch. He lay there, heaving for air, red-faced, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with disbelief. The dojo was silent, completely still. The air felt heavy with disbelief, as if everyone was waiting for someone else to explain what just happened. Even the instructor's stoic expression had cracked slightly. His arms dropped to his sides. His eyes were wide, brows lifted just enough to betray his surprise. The woman stood calm, hands resting gently in front of her, breathing steady, waiting respectfully. For instruction? She didn't gloat. She didn't even look at the man still struggling to sit up behind her. It was as if he no longer existed in her mind. He finally got to his knees, then his feet, still gasping, still red, his grin gone, his arrogance gone. The dojo that had once echoed with his laughter now stared at him in silence. And for the first time, he looked small. One of the senior students broke the quiet. He stepped forward slowly, offering a slight bow toward the woman. "Where did you train?" His voice held no sarcasm now, only respect. She met his gaze, her voice soft but certain. Various places, years of work, it's mostly private instruction. There was no need to elaborate. Her performance had said enough. The instructor stepped forward now, bowing slightly. It wasn't theatrical, but it was genuine. Okay. A gesture earned, not given. "Would you consider leading a short demonstration?" he asked. There was something different in his tone and openness, an acknowledgement that whatever they assumed before was no longer relevant. She nodded once. The class sat in a semicircle, legs crossed, back straight. No whispering, no smirks, eyes wide, hands still. Stepped forward, requested a volunteer, not the black belt, though he sat in the back now, quiet and unmoving. Another student rose, unsure, clearly nervous. She smiled gently and bowed, inviting him to do the same. And then, with calm, steady movement, she began. Every strike she threw was measured. Every block, every pivot was smooth, quiet, exact. She explained nothing. She demonstrated everything. Her movements were elegant, not flashy, rooted in discipline. She didn't strike hard. She didn't need to. Instead, she flowed one technique into another, transitioning through grapples, locks, and escapes like water through cupped fingers. It wasn't power they were watching. It was control, total, intentional, patient control. The student she worked with tapped quickly when she demonstrated a shoulder lock. She released him with a smile and guided him gently back to his spot. Then she motioned for another. A different student rose, bowing more quickly this time. He was taller, broader, approached with more hesitation than pride. She demonstrated, again this time, a wrist redirection, followed by a fluid disarm. It was over before the student even realized he was off balance. He bowed deeper when they finished. By the time she turned to face the group again, the energy in the room had completely shifted. She was no longer just the newcomer. She was the one who had humbled the strongest. But she didn't lean into it. No victory lap, no smugness. Only a bow. She looked out across the students, all sitting in awe, all silent. Then she spoke, her voice clear but quiet. Strength isn't in how loud you strike, she said, her eyes flicking briefly toward the black belt in the back who still hadn't moved. It's in how quietly you can end it. No one responded. Not because they didn't understand, but because there was nothing to add. The truth was plain. The silence itself was an answer. She bowed one final time and stepped back, leaving only the sound of the soft shuffle of her feet on the mat behind her. And somewhere in the back, the black belt finally lowered his eyes. The class ended, but no one moved to leave. The students gathered around her slowly, not in a rush, but in quiet curiosity. Their energy had changed. The ones who once eyed her with doubt now stepped forward with open gestures, heads tilted in respect. About her breathing technique, another complimented her fluid transitions. A third simply said, "I misjudged you. I'm sorry." She responded to each softly, never lingering on their past assumptions, only offering guidance, simple nods, or gentle encouragement. She didn't seem interested in attention, only in answering with honesty. The dojo, which had earlier buzzed, with misplaced confidence now felt grounded, centered. Even the instructor approached, his arms behind his back, his posture straight. But there was no stiffness in his voice anymore. "We'd be honored if you came back. I'd like to invite you to the advanced sessions," he said, not offering but requesting. She met his gaze, nodded once, and said, "If time allows." It wasn't a boast. It wasn't coy. It was just the truth. The invitation hung in the air a moment longer before he smiled faintly and gave her a respectful bow, one that echoed something deeper than routine. From the edge of the mat, the black belt watched. He had remained seated while the others moved. His GI was rumpled, sweat-soaked, and his shoulders slouched not in defeat, but in reconsideration. When he finally stood, it was slow and stiff. He walked toward her, not with swagger, but with the hesitation of someone who had been forced to meet himself. His voice was lower than usual, the grin gone. "I was out of line," he said. "That choke. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done it." His eyes didn't quite meet hers. She looked at him calmly, then gave the smallest nod. He added quickly, "I thought you were just never mind. I was wrong." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then said, "You still have time to be better." He blinked, nodded, and stepped back. It wasn't absolution. Outside the dojo, the light had begun to fade. The sun was low, golden and soft against the sidewalks. She stepped through the doors with her bag over her shoulder, her breathing still even, her pace unhurried. She hadn't come for transformation, but something had shifted nonetheless. As she passed the front step, a voice called out, young, hesitant. A teenage girl stood near the bike rack, her shoes scuffed, hands clutching a flyer. She looked up, wide-eyed, nervous. "Excuse me," she said, voice just above a whisper. I was watching from outside. I wanted to come in, but ... I was too scared. Everyone looked so serious. But after what you did, I think I'll try next time." The woman paused, turned toward her, and smiled, not wide, but real. She stepped closer, lowered herself slightly to the girl's eye level. "You don't have to be perfect to begin," she said gently. "Just step on the mat. That's how it begins." The girl looked at her, eyes brightening, and nodded with a kind of hope that hadn't been there before. Back inside, the sound of the mats being cleaned had quieted. The black belt remained behind after the others left. He no longer moved with the loud confidence he wore earlier. Instead, he stood before the mirror, slowly reviewing his own stance. No shouting, no audience, just practice. His movements were smaller now, measured. He glanced down at a notebook, scribbled something, then resumed. It was clumsy, but it was different. The ego had cracked hand. Something else was trying to grow. Outside, the woman continued walking. The breeze tugged gently at her shirt. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The echo of what happened in that dojo would remain long after she left. She hadn't come to teach anyone a lesson. She hadn't come to humiliate or conquer. But sometimes the universe calls quiet strength to rise, not for applause, but for balance. She walked into the falling sun, her shadow long behind her, face still steps light. The world moved around her, but she moved through it unchanged. carrying a truth that didn't need to be shouted. Sometimes the strongest warrior is the one who doesn't need to prove it till you make them.